afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a pleasure to invite you to the NASSCOM IIMB Leadership Resource Center, very first leadership session. Thank you for being here. And it's a pleasure to kind of put faces to a number of names, because I've had phone calls with many of you. But even more important is that they have been some of the champions from the beginning, and I see many of them in the room. So thanks for kind of making that also happen. I'll take about 5 to 7 minutes to kind of lay the context for today's session, because unlike many other sessions, what is distinctive about this is, in some sense, it is the coming together of a dream, okay? A dream from two partners. So the journey has taken us really long. February 2016 was the first time that NASSCOM came to IIM Bangalore, asking us whether we could partner on future-ready leadership competencies. At that point in time, it was envisaged that this will be a research project. And obviously from IIM Bangalore, we were like absolutely delighted, because this was something that internally we have been working on for long, in terms of how do we actually make organizations and leaders in India future ready, knowing that what we are doing today is really about keeping pace with what is changing today. So what we did between March and June was we did workshops in several cities, and Kamal, the workshop in Calcutta, which probably we had the largest number of small and medium enterprises, and the workshops in other cities where we met leaders from the GICs, large Indian companies, mid-sized Indian companies, largely services companies to begin with. And 2 or 3 things came out of that research project. The first and the most important insight that we gained is that while the nature of issues across organizations, in terms of size, in terms of sector, in terms of products and services, in terms of locations, while there might be variations, the broad overarching leadership competencies for the future, absolutely no difference, okay? And there were 4 competencies that came out. Why am I calling these future-ready competencies? Because many of our organizations, our training and development is already investing on what is needed for today to get better. So what are those 4 future-ready competencies that came so distinctly as a part of our study? The first and the most important one that came out was really about sensing. Can we sense the future? And for each one of you as entrepreneurs sitting in this room as leaders, sensing is 50% of our job. If we sense right, we know how to go back and tell our team, run behind this idea, okay? But if you are not able to sense, who else can sense on behalf of your organization? Now, very interesting, and I want to nuance this in terms of how does this differ. Now, very interesting, in GICs, we realized that the same sensing was in being able to sense the rate at which my organization's customer is changing. So here I am sitting in India delivering products for my parent organization, and my parent's organization's customer is getting disrupted. How do I know and keep abreast of it? Okay? Now that's a very, very different kind of a problem from having a customer face to face. And yet, if I am not 2 steps ahead of what my parent is thinking, what will happen to me as a subsidiary? So the nature of leadership characteristic that is needed is understanding my parent so well that I can infer based on what my parent is thinking about what my customer will require. Now, this is a completely different kind of sensing. For Indian large organizations, and it's interesting that when we started doing one-on-one interviews with them, by then Trump had become real. Okay? And to be quite honest with you, none of us know how to sense Trump even today. And imagine if each one of you had millions of dollars invested in US, and for many of us it's a reality. What happens when we can't predict? And I can't predict 6 months. Forget about predicting 3 years, okay? So at one level, what really hit us was how consistently leadership, future-ready leadership characteristics were so common and cutting across every one of these segments. The second one, which was even more interesting, assuming I could sense, and assuming that I have sensed ahead of my competition, how do I get my internal organization to move? Yeah? Not everybody can see it at the same rate that you can. And I'm sure all of us have struggled with it, right? We see an opportunity, we go back and try convincing our team that this opportunity is worth investing in, and they turn around and say, but it will take me 6 days, it will take 5 weeks of training before we can actually look at putting a demo or a prototype together. And you're saying we will get the skills, we will build the capabilities, but yeah? So we know how difficult it is. So the interesting question is, assuming I am going to sense ahead of competition, when the lead was sufficient, I had 18 months to prepare. Today, when I have less than 6 months, when my competitor can catch up on that idea, it's not my capacity to sense, but my capacity to convert that sensing into an opportunity within the organization to make change happen. Now, do I have that capability? And the biggest vulnerability, I must confess, in small and medium enterprises was my second line. Okay? And this just kept coming up in terms of saying, I can sense ahead, but the fact is, I have to be involved in making that happen. Okay? Between business as usual and exploring that new prototype, where is my time going to go? Yeah? So interesting, that was the second one that came out. The third one, particularly for IT services industry, because I did this experiment after I finished the research project with manufacturing, with construction, with retail, with insurance. I've done the same experiments over and over, and what I find is that there is what got us successful so far. The same set of heuristics and decisions that we did is exactly the cause of our failure. Yeah, this is the recipe of success. That because we have never seen failure, our capacity to adapt when failure hits, yeah, and to drop everything I have done and take a new way, I found that a lot of organizations, particularly founders and senior leaders, were struggling because it means you have to say that my decision was wrong. It's a public acknowledgement that I made a mistake. And that is difficult for any of us, especially when you have ridden the success for 20 years and you're seen as a successful person. So it is not that you're not able to see what is happening. It is just that after having seen how much time it takes for me to act is just too costly for the organization. Yeah, that was the third one that came out very, very clearly. And the last one was interesting. It was around agility. Okay? Many of them spoke about agile methodology. But the latent one, when we went across organizations, what really came up was not speed. Okay, not speed. Flexibility in thinking. Flexibility in decision making. And how quickly am I willing to drop something that's not working, pick it up and redo it differently. Okay? So, when we came back with this set of competencies and started looking at who are the organizations, what are they doing around this, and how can we build it, quite honestly, we realized that almost everyone across the world is struggling with this. So, in a way, it's good that all of us are struggling. But what is completely unacceptable is that for many others, the struggle is in hundreds. For us, anything is exponential of 100. Okay, so if we have to crack it, we just have to crack it. How do we do it? Yeah, so that's a whole thing which is there. But the other one on SMEs that struck us, and this is something that I just want to spend a few minutes to kind of close, is on the SMEs, we realized that a large number of us, okay, 3 key findings exclusively for SMEs. First one is that I realized many entrepreneurs have never invested on themselves. Very interesting. We send our people for training to other organizations, but When was the last time each one of us as entrepreneurs went for a training to update myself? And if you are not updated, who else can lead? So this one just hit us every time, because in a way the person who created the enterprise becomes an obstacle to the growth of the enterprise. That really hit. That really hit. The second one that hit us equally is that you seem to have an army of execution, but execution is not sufficient. Where is that army that has to think on your behalf? And it comes back again to the next in line and how do we build capability. And the last one that kind of really got us thinking is, forget about future ready competencies. A lot of you in the interviews that we did, and we interviewed about close to 50 people, entrepreneurs one-on-one, saying, what are your challenges? Where do you see issues? What is the kind of support you will need? And very interestingly, an overwhelming large number of them basically said, as I have to scale, as I have to find new customers, I realize that I don't have enough capability to manage today. Forget about managing the future. If I have to free up 30% of my time to think about that new business, what happens to that 30%? What all has to happen? So this kind of really was the trigger when we came back and said, what do we do with all this that we have? And that's where NASSCOM stepped in and said, can we conceive of a leadership resource center, which is a collective where we can come and share, learn, and grow. So that's the larger canvas, and since last August, it's taken us this much time to get where we are. So today's session has basically two objectives. The first objective is, having many of you in this room, can we use this little window to be able to learn something new? Definitely, right? Otherwise, why will you come here and spend so much of time? And the second one is really to ask you and share with you what has been our thinking on Leadership Resource Center. And some of you have had a chance to look at it, but we will show you very quickly a short demo and to basically seek inputs from you on twofold. One, what can I contribute to this? Two, how can I contribute in terms of enabling you and say that, look, I don't have this, I want to know about this, can you curate on LRC? Okay, that's contribution. I don't see that as question, because one person is asking that question saying, I don't know how to do this, but we are going to use that to be able to enable hundreds of others to be able to, who may not have that opportunity to ask us. Okay, so what we want is feedback and input from you. Okay, so that's broadly what we intend to do today.